Okay, this is my study. It is called Technology Free, and the purpose is, the full title is Choosing Not to Use Mobile Technologies While Outdoors. Now, what I did find is that sometimes the participants did use technology outdoors, and so really it's kind of an exploration of the interaction of the outdoor experience and technology. It's a phenomenology. I did this because I believe that the outdoors is an experience, mobile technologies and using them are an experience. Um, they can both be a way of living, and the intersection of the two of them is a lived experience and a way of living. My method was a little bit different in that I actually, because of the topic, I thought, well, why don't we interview and actually do it? Go outside and do an outdoor experience of some kind of outdoor activity. Talk about it while we're doing it and talk about mobile technologies. And I recorded it, but I did not take notes. I had the participant wear the voice recorder. And I also did not use an interview guide. I had my research question and I had follow-up questions. So it wasn't unstructured. It was somewhere in that continuum towards semi-structured. Um, the first interview was snowshoeing up at Tie City, and this was April 1st of this year. Now this picture, and I have to apologize for the bad focus. I took it with my iPhone, and my iPhone has just decided not to focus on pictures anymore. So um, this was snowshoeing up at Tie City. The participant was kind of new to the area, and so this is kind of important because she was confused as to Tie City and Tie Siding, and so we had an actual conversation about that that has shows up on the transcript. Um, but the snow conditions were very different. It had snowed earlier that week, and the snow was really nice for snowshoeing. It was also really cold, so it wasn't mushy snow. It was pretty light and fluffy, and a nice day to go. It was a little cold and it was a little windy, but it did not look like this. When I came up here, this is about 3 weeks later, and given my background in geology and positivist sort of framework, I kind of struggled with even taking these pictures and using them as somewhat of a photo elicitation as my presentation, kind of myself, my experience interviewing. I kind of struggled a little bit because they're not authentic. I didn't take them at the time of the interview, and that seemed like a big deal to me. I'm not sure. I had a lot to think about with the interview and trying to make sure that I got all the information and that the voice recorder was recording and trying to snowshoe without falling over. So, I don't know. I may incorporate taking pictures into my interviews in the future, but I'm trying it out. This may actually spin off into another paper just on the methodology and the method that I use to do this in my own experience. So I'm trying it out in this presentation here and focusing more on my experience with the interviews rather than my analysis, which, full disclosure, it's still happening right now. So I don't really have anything summed up to share at this point yet. So we snowshoed. Um, we carefully consulted the map. We walked out for about an hour and turned around and came back. It was still winter, and it was actually quite prettier that day than this picture I think shows. When you're snowshoeing, the trails are much narrower, and so you're much the trees kind of close in, and the forest closes in around you. And the wind hadn't really been blowing too much yet, so the snow was still hanging really thickly on the trees and everything. Now, the second interview was 2 days later, same place, Tie City Trailhead, but it was skiing. So it was a different trail, and the snow conditions really played into that because there was a very different snow conditions. It was icy when we started out, and it had turned to mush by the time we were done skiing. And that makes a big difference with skiing as opposed to snowshoeing. I mean, I think they're both important, but in different ways. It was an interesting experience. The participant didn't look at the map. But she humored me and stayed on the green trails. She's definitely an expert skier and has been skiing up here for about 20 years or 30 years. I mean, a long time. And so doesn't need to look at the maps anymore. Versus I have only been cross country skiing for about 2 years. And so I was very grateful to stay on the easy trails and I had a lot of fun. I really enjoy Nordic skiing, so that was a nice chance to get out. And here it is, the trail heading out. To me, this looks very beckoning. This is sort of my experience and kind of bracketing, um, sort of taking my excitement out of it, but yet I was still pretty excited to go and to do the snowshoeing and the skiing. So that kind of factored into there. I was pretty enthusiastic about this, and it was sunny that day, a little bit colder than it is in the time of this photograph. And one thing the participant brought up in the interview, and that's on the transcript as well, is the snow conditions. She kept talking about that. You can see that it was icy. It started out really icy, and she had been skiing for an hour before she even met up with me for the interview. And it had been really icy then, and it quickly turned to mush. And you can see the footprints, the dog prints, and you can see some ski tracks as well um, in the snow. Now, this is kind of again my own experience into this. I find this a very appealing picture. The warming hut to me represents sort of a safety, security, like if the weather turned bad, you could like stay in there if you had to. Um, there's a chimney, there's a stove in there. The sign says welcome on the outside. You can't see it, but because it's out of focus, but um, we didn't, I thought a lot more of the interview would take place in here, and it did not. Neither interview, neither one did we even go in here. Um, Now, interview three was a week or so later, and I arrived early. This was at a dog park in Laramie, and the participant had dogs, and so we met at a dog park, let her dogs walk around, and just sort of talked for a little while. I got there early, so I was looking at some rocks. And so that was kind of my experience and my part of it is to look at these rocks while I was waiting. And then I walked down and looked at the river and I noticed the stones along the river. This is not a very authentic picture. It was threatening rain that day. It was a little bit warmer. There wasn't snow, but it was threatening rain. And so again, the weather conditions don't look the same as it did that day. I looked a lot at the banks, the interpretive signs, and studied those. And I found them really interesting. And I think this has to do with, again, my positivist reality. But I still think it's kind of interesting that I did a little bit of constructivism as well as I constructed my own reality by going out and then looking for all the stuff that I saw on the interpretive signs and comparing it with what they were telling me with what I was actually seeing. So the fourth interview was, this is the most authentic of the pictures. I took these pictures only 2 days after the interview and the weather was very similar. We met at Washington Park by the bandshell and I found this to be a really appealing place as well. I really like pine trees and this path. I guess paths I must like, natural looking paths because I just want to walk down them. Um, I like conifers. I noticed there was a lot of conifer trees there, and I really enjoy that because I grew up in northern Wisconsin, so they're really familiar to me. This is a kind of an interesting one, but I made up a name for it. I have no idea what this tree is. I've never seen it before, but it's kind of cool looking. And saw this big rock, but we didn't talk about this at all. I just took a picture of it later because I thought that's a cool rock. And I noticed the kids' pool, not in use, because my kids go and swim there in the summer at Washington Park. So that was part of my experience. The participant pointed out that her family had been um, kind of instrumental or cooperative type of thing in putting up these exercise areas. And so that's something I never would have noticed if it was just me. And she noticed that that was sort of part of her reality with the interview. Um, and there it is again, it's a complete workout. You can go through and do all these exercises around it. So we ended it there at the bandshell as well. Um, and just sat and talked on one of those benches for quite a while. So overall, those were kind of a snapshot of the different experiences I had interviewing. And like I said, I'm just looking into possibly spinning this off into another study that just focuses on the experience of interviewing. So thanks.